this back to the Tibetan Buddhism, explain why in these teachings we are working towards liberating beyond samsara.
Certainly. You know, the term of Gaia awakening has 3 lines. And these lines look very innocent and kind of innocuous at the beginning. And you just wonder, well, you know, I mean, what's up here, you know? I'm saying the Turton who received this term or who caught the signal is saying, oh, this is it. You practice these 3 lines, and this is the foundation for your interactivity with the divine Sophia, who is embodied in the earth. Just practice these 3 lines. And you might think, someone approaching it in that framework might think, oh, well, these 3 lines must say something about technically, you know, do this meditation or repeat this syllable or take this portion. No, it says you cannot become anything but more beautiful. Now practice that. Practice that. And that gives you the foundation to interact with her. It's her way of saying, these are my conditions. You understand? These are her conditions. And the 3rd line is, of course, samsara and this enlightenment have the same look. And that is one line that needs a little bit of commentary, because people may not know what samsara is, although I think it's a generally understood word. Samsara is a Sanskrit word widely used in Tibetan Buddhism that means the realm of cyclic blind repetition of behavior, the realm of confusion and illusion in which human beings live, samsara. And it is generally contrasted to enlightenment. If you become enlightened, then you no longer live in samsara, you no longer behave in a samsaric fashion. That is to say, blindly and stupidly, ignorantly repeating your behavior and making the same mistakes and so forth. And so it's rather a shock to hear those 2 things equated. Samsara and this enlightenment have the same look. They have the same look, which is the key to that phrase. So anyway, it means that the enlightenment that we come into through the connection with Gaia doesn't require us to go anywhere else. Doesn't require us to go in another world, to ascend to any other dimensions. It's all right here and now. Like the Vishvasara Tantra says, what is here is there. What is not here is nowhere. And so we have, with the term of Gaia awakening, the opportunity to achieve the realization of enlightenment that the Buddhists and the Tibetan Buddhists have been offering all these years, or claim to have a kind of monopoly on, in deluxe fashion beyond anything they themselves ever achieved. And so the game is up for them. As far as I'm concerned, Tibetan Buddhism is another one of these hierarchical male domination structures that the goddess is going to reduce to rubble, is reducing to rubble as I speak. And I've often said before, planetary tantra is the liberation of the practice of liberation.
Yes, and what do you feel the fear was, since the goddess delivered Tibet their Buddhism? What do you feel was the fear, or was it just a matter of time and history and the story that we would live out through the patriarchal period until we got to this next phase?
Well, there are 2 factors. This is a very long story, and this is like, again, another sorcerer's tale. Or for, come on, more champagne, a few more. We want an extra order of guacamole with really blue corn tortilla chips, because that's the only way we're going to get to the truth here, The truth consists of 2 parts, one of which I've never said before in public. So here is the scoop. Before the intervention of the archons in the theocratic systems of the Middle East, there was a previous intervention around 18,000 BC, and that occurred in the Himalayan Tibetan region. And that's when the archons actually first cracked into the human mind. And so behind the long tradition of Bonpo and the hierarchy of the Tibetan masters, the tulkus, the rinpoches, and so forth. Behind that whole massively absurdly complicated and over-categorized male domination structure is just an archontic con. And even though a lot of genuine psychology and understanding of the consciousness, human consciousness, and the structures of consciousness came out of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the connection to the goddess was repressed because of the fact that it was it was largely directed by an archontic orientation and not an erotic, earthbound orientation. That's part of the story, and that goes back a long, long ways. I've never said that before.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about.
But there's a more immediate answer, too. And I noticed, I really appreciated this in your notes here, about Tara was brought to Tibet by a Tisha. Mm-hmm. Well, sort of. But Tara was also brought to Tibet by someone else. Mm-hmm. And this story of how Tara got to Tibet and where she came from is a really wonderful story that needs to be told sometime. And it is the true story of the true identity of, oh, that's beautiful. What a beautiful name, Tisha. Of the true identity of Padmasambhava. Mm. You know, this whole fairy tale and bullshit that they give us about Padmasambhava, Precious Rinpoche, founder of Tibetan Buddhism, is really a miserable concoction of old men sitting around in robes and drinking yak buttered tea. And I can come up with a far better concoction than that, and also one that is actually more veracious. You know, the real name of Padmasambhava was Shakyanatha. And he was not born of a lotus, but he was a Scythian warrior from the area of the Silk Route. And he was very involved in this connection between the Dravidian cults of southern India, where Tara originated, and the plateau of Tibet. So there's a whole untold story here, which the Tibetans themselves don't even know. It's time for them to let go of this monopoly on the spontaneously arising Dakini wisdom. In fact, they've already let go. It's gone out of their hands. It went out of their hands when I heard the first line of the term of Gaia awakening on a hillside in Spain 3 years ago. Mm. And that spontaneously arising Dakini wisdom is the frequency of Gaia in your own subliminal mind. Your mind at its subliminal level is already enlightened. And the Dakinis speak to you in the elixir syntax of enlightenment in your own mind. And this is our wisdom. It is the wisdom of our species speaking to us, connecting us with her. And it can no longer ever be held by a male patriarchal institution or by the claim of men to a special status of enlightenment. It's over.
Yeah, it is over. And it's much more simple, so that's nice. Thank you for answering that.
More simple. It really is much more simple this way. And planetary Tantra, for reasons which I cannot give you at length right now, has many fail-safes built into it. I want you to know that. Don't take it on faith from me, but consider it in confidence with me. It has many, many fail-safes built into it. I have been shown in depth. And it can never, ever develop into a hierarchical organization, nor is it meant to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Suzanne. We are speaking with John Lash. You can purchase any of his many books through Amazon. Please support him by visiting his website, metahistory.org. We're moving on to Rite Action and Gaian Eco-Sorcery. Next is Uranus Rising.
John, you've spoken about the three aspects of shamanism in regards to your teaching on Gaian Eco-Sorcery. The first aspect is what the general urban concept of what shamanism is today, but the other two are excluded. possibly a new age, dumbing down, put us back to sleep agenda, and I would think a clever, manipulated misdirection. So much so that the urban concept of shamanism has become romanticized and impotent, in my opinion. Even anthropologists in the field beginning in the late 19th century began to split these aspects of shamanism into good and bad camps, which smacks of their observations being manipulated or mind-controlled. Would you describe these three aspects of shamanism which are necessary to Gaian eco-sorcery, and why these are all necessary in the path of right action against the intra-species predators?
Sure. Those observations are really key, really right on. Something is wrong with our understanding of shamanism. You know, I've said before, it's a fantastic achievement what we've learned about shamanism from the 60s. I think Eliade's book on archaic techniques of ecstasy, shamanism, archaic techniques of ecstasy, came out in English maybe in 52, something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, so in half a century, with the kickoff of the 60s, of course, being a factor.
Meeting Francis Huxley put me in my place and wised me up about it.
Yeah, Francis Huxley, pal of mine from Santa Fe. We used to have very, very, very funny guy, but brilliant and wonderful. He had some great perceptions of it because, of course, he was the real thing. He had gone to South America and done field work and everything. So, Francis, wherever you are in the shamanic paradise, I wish you well. But there's a problem with the paradigm, as you note, is that it's been focused on one aspect, and it's been turned into, we have ayahuasca tourism and shamanism becoming an urban pastime, basically. And this is not where it's at, and this is due to the fact that we don't have a fully rounded paradigm for shamanic practice. So I'm suggesting that we round it off, and I would use the humble example of a three-legged stool. The one leg of the stool that we know is the paradigm that you described, where shamanism is defined as a vision quest, following the model of the vision quests among the Aborigines, the walkabout of the Australian Aborigines, or the vision quest among Native Americans. And the vision quest involves connecting with a power animal, gaining a vision of your life as a spiritual being, a transpersonal view, we would say, and acquiring healing powers and other various shamanic abilities. But that's not all there is to it. That's generally all that's sold in the shamanic package today, in the new and improved shamanism products that are being peddled, But there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more. So I would suggest that the second leg, and this is kind of like the peg leg or the shorter leg of the stool because it puts it a little off balance, is sexuality has to be included, That doesn't mean necessarily that there are shamanic sexual practices, although there are. But before you get to the shamanic sexual practices, which technically belong to an inner facet of planetary tantra called Kala Tantra, before you get to that, it's just incorporating sexual energy and the play of sexuality, the erotic and sexual play that is in human nature, the erotic